Every human being dies, but almost no one knows what really happens in those final seconds. Yet studies involving over 2,000 near-death experiencers, hospice doctors, and neurobiologists have already revealed the first answers. And one insight runs through all cultures, religions, and scientific reports. 99% of people make the same mistake in that moment. A mistake they never notice, but one that determines what happens next to their soul. This video shows you what really happens when you die, what you feel, what you think, and why your final thought can change everything. This is not horror, this is not a miracle, this is truth, and it concerns you. When a person dies, something strange happens, not just physically but mentally. Many report that in a single instant their entire life flashes before their eyes. Science calls it a life review, a phenomenon documented by researchers like Dr. Bruce Grayson at the University of Virginia. But the final thought is no coincidence. It arises from what we have never emotionally released. Guilt, fear, anger, or love, whatever is strongest, stays. And here is where almost everyone makes the same mistake. They die in an inner state they never consciously chose. Hospice workers like Bronnie Ware, who spoke with thousands of dying people, report a striking pattern. At the end of life, people don't regret what they did. They regret what they didn't do. Unlived dreams, unspoken love, unresolved conflicts. These feelings don't stay behind, they go with us. The final thought becomes a bridge or a chain. According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead and modern regression therapists, this exact moment shapes the direction of our next state of being. Not because we're punished, but because consciousness always flows toward what it's most attached to. In countless near-death accounts, collected by organizations like the International Association for Near-Death Studies, IANDS, people consistently report they not only felt their own death, but also the emotions they had caused in others. Joy, pain, guilt, reflected back at the speed of light. It's not an external judgment, it's an inner truth revealing itself. And those who remain in fear at that moment often find themselves in a world that feels like fear, not as punishment, but as resonance. It's not dogma, it's consciousness, physics. The mistake is not dying, the mistake is being unprepared. Believing that the final thought doesn't matter when it may be the only thing that truly does. Because if consciousness continues, and more scientists like Dr. Sam Parnia and Dr. Pim van Lommel believe it does, then this moment is not an ending, it is a transition. And how you pass through it depends on what you carry within, not in your body, but in your heart. For many people, the real journey after death begins with the appearance of a light. Warm, bright, all-encompassing. That's how thousands of survivors describe it. In a large-scale study led by Dr. Sam Parnia at the University of Southampton, 39% of patients who had experienced cardiac arrest reported conscious experiences. Many described the light as peaceful, welcoming, even as home, but a few refused to step into it. And that's where the controversy begins. What is this light really? In ancient spiritual teachings, from the Egyptians to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the light is seen as a threshold, but not all cultures viewed it as the goal. Some saw it as a trap. American reincarnation researcher Dr. Michael Newton documented thousands of regressions in which some souls were drawn back into new lives through the light, often without memory, often without choice. A kind of system. Some called it soul recycling. Others spoke of a cosmic tunnel that pulls us back before we can realize who we truly are. Radical? Maybe. But these accounts appear on every continent, independently of one another. In one of the world's most famous near-death experiences, the case of Mellon Thomas Benedict, the man recounts how he consciously chose not to go into the light. Instead, he turned away and experienced a vastness beyond all imagination. The universe itself, fields of consciousness, deep stillness. His statement, "The light was not the end, but a handover point, a place of decision." And that is the core of this chapter. Maybe the light is not salvation, but an offer. And like any offer, you have a choice, but here lies the mistake. 99% of people don't know they even have a choice. They follow, like they're programmed to. And that's exactly what continues the cycle. Reincarnation as automation, not as spiritual evolution. What if we could consciously pause in that moment? What if we could ask, is this my path, or just the next loop? The light is not good or evil, but it is not neutral. It is powerful. And like any powerful system, it deserves a conscious choice, not an automatic one. The real mistake doesn't happen at death, but in the life before it, because almost no one prepares themselves inwardly for that moment. We suppress it. We think there's still time, but death doesn't ask if we're ready. And when it comes, most people experience it in a state of unconsciousness, full of fear, full of attachment, full of identification with things that cannot go with them. That is the mistake. Not dying, but dying in the wrong inner state. Neurocardiologist Dr. Roland McCready from the HeartMath Institute explains that the human heart is up to 60 times more powerful electromagnetically than the brain. And in states of fear or love, it generates entirely different frequencies. These frequencies follow us into the final moment. And according to near-death researcher Pim van Lommel, consciousness persists beyond that point, but it is shaped by the emotional state in which we cross over. In other words, your last inner state forms your first experience after death. Those who believe at that moment that the light is the only truth won't ask questions. Those who think nothing can be changed won't choose. And those who believe death is the end will enter into shock and emptiness. The mistake is passivity, the belief that there's no choice. But ancient mystery schools taught the opposite, that dying is a sacred rite of passage, and that only those who die consciously can truly become free, not because they control it, but because they remember. So how can you avoid the mistake? You can start by living more consciously today, by forgiving old wounds, by clearing your mind, by not just using your body but inhabiting it, and by constantly reminding yourself that you are not the body, but the consciousness that experiences it. In that state, you won't fear death. You will recognize it, not as an end, but as a mirror. And in that mirror, you will know whether you are ready to move on or to stand still by free will. We all die, but not everyone dies consciously. Maybe that's the greatest task of this life, to remember before it ends. Not to search outside, but to clean up inside, to let go of what cannot come with us, and to make peace with ourselves, with others, with life itself. The mistake 99% make is not a judgment, it's a wake-up call. If you've watched this video until now, you're one of the few who are willing to truly look. That doesn't make you better, but it makes you more awake. Maybe it's no coincidence that you're here today. Maybe this is the moment you've been waiting for. Tell us in the comments, what will you choose for your final moment? And what will you start doing differently from today on? Because we are not alone in asking this question. We are Zeitgeist, and we believe that there is no greater truth than the one waiting inside us. If this video touched you, share it with someone you love. Maybe it's the beginning of a conversation you never had, but always needed. Subscribe to Zeitgeist if you want to know more, feel more, and maybe someday, remember more. We'll see you in the next episode.